September rain. Baby, tell me what's the vibe now. Baby, loving you, tell me what's the vibe now. I'm still in love with you, in love with you, in love with you. I'm still in love with you, in love with you. September rain. Oh, still loving you. September rain. Baby, come back to me. September rain. Oh, still loving you. September rain. Baby, reminded by September rain. Baby, tell me what's the vibe now. Baby, tell me what's the vibe now. September rain. Oh, still loving you. September rain. Baby, come back to me. September rain. Oh, still loving you. September rain. Baby, reminded by September rain. Don't remind me. Don't remind me. Baby, come back to me. September rain. I'm still in love with you, in love with you, in love with you. I'm still in love with you, in love with you, in love with you. I'm still in love with you. September rain. Summer of love. Summer of love.
Baby, baby, say that you love me. I cried for you. Baby, baby, there's something in your eyes. Baby,
Of love.
baby, baby,
Morning.
Good morning. Hope everybody's well.
Yeah. Jack, you look like RoboCop or something with that black thing on your arm. What is that?
Thumb brace. I lost a thumb wrestling competition with my wife.
I can believe that.
My doctor prescribed a better excuse. So she recommended I just say that it's arthritis.
I think that's a very smart doctor, I would say. All right. Hey, Sana, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dennis?
So far, so good.
Hi, Jack. How's everyone? Dawn.
Think everyone's doing good. Anyone got any complaints? Oh, never mind. Oh, you seem to be muted. I'm sorry. I can't understand what you're saying. Okay, well, hello everybody, and thank you for appearing in the midst of my monitor. We're causing Jack to drink. He just downed a Budweiser. I just saw that. So I understand totally. As I say to my kids when they were little and they would cry, I'd say, I know exactly how you feel. So I'm sorry that the email that went out was a little mistaken. Today we're going to cover newsjacking. So I meant to make that change, probably a little too late to make the email, but we are going to cover newsjacking. And some of you may remember that subject. But it's a what in kind of preparation. So what we have is at this moment in time, we have lots of different channels of communication. We're all familiar with our websites and of course all the various social media, and then there's radio and TV and blah blah blah. It goes on and on and on. And one of the jobs that we all have to do is figure out where is our audience, where are they living, and how do you get to them? How do you communicate with them? And so one of the really difficult things from a budget perspective is getting enough money together to build awareness so that people can find you. In general, in the e-commerce space, the rule of thumb is, and this is really, I think, overstating it, but if you get 3% of the visitors to whatever vehicle you're using, whether it's a website or social media, if you get 3% to actually do something, that's actually Amazon's conversion rate, believe it or not. And most people are well below that. So you can quickly see that the number of people that you have to have come check you out one way or the other is really high. And the cost of that has only gone up. Even in the 2 years or so that we've been doing this class, we've seen those numbers skyrocket. I think Sana is a really good example where her first year and a half or so that she was in business, she basically ran Facebook ads and just shipped out packages. And then all of a sudden, the Facebook ad cost went up geometrically and forced her to start looking at other ways to get people to check her out. Is that right, Sana? Did I say that correctly?
That's exactly right. So the first year, a little more than a year that I ran my ads, my average cost of customer acquisition was it was like two something max. I mean, there were days when I paid more, but the average fell around $2 something. Towards the end, when I turned it off, when I was with this group, I believe it may have been September, October, it went up to like $110 per purchase of like $14. So and it happened several times. And so even if it was going to average out, I just couldn't afford that. So I turned it off.
So it went from roughly $2 to $110.
It did. So there were some major updates as well. And also iOS changed their privacy settings. So they weren't really working with Facebook as well as they used to. So there were a lot of different things that, had that impact, but I haven't tried it since, really, not on my products, but I've been doing it on other stuff. So I'll have to give it a try to see how, what it's like now. It's been 7, 8 months now.
Yeah, I think it's even higher now, is my
Oh gosh.
understanding. But so one of the techniques that we've talked about in this class before, and I was able to find a video from the guy who actually invented this concept or figured it out. And it's, we're all aware of various news items. For example, the last couple of years, every channel of communication has been saturated with stories about COVID and COVID lockdown and all kinds of related stuff to COVID. More recently, I think we've seen the war in Ukraine, and even more recently, we're seeing more school shooting and so forth. We also have lots of news from the world of sports. It could be the NBA finals, it could be the Super Bowl, and all kinds of things. It could be local high school, it could be local senior track and field where people are running, or there's just so many different types of items that I'm going to characterize as news. And the point of this, what we're going to be talking about, is to figure out relevant news to you and what you're doing, your niche or your product, and see if there's ways that you can incorporate news or items that are high profile, even if it's just in your niche, as opposed to national or international news. And how do you newsjack it? How do you add that to your methods of getting people to come to your channels? So this guy, he's got a book out. I believe it's in its 8th or 9th edition of how to do marketing in the modern age and how to do PR. I'm sure he'll pitch it in this video, and if not, I'll post it. I have the book. He's really well known in this space, so I was really happy to find him actually explaining it, which is as good as it gets. So let me share that, and so we'll watch it, and then we'll talk about it. So much for that, huh? Sorry about that. Let me see what's happening. Get it going. Okay, sorry about that. Hold on one second. Houston, we have a problem. Okay.
Hi, everybody. It's Christina Daves with PR for Anyone. Super excited, super honored to have David Meerman Scott with us today. I have followed him for years. He doesn't even know this, but when I first started this about 7 years ago, I sped through your books.
Okay, I'm going to start this over again. Sorry about that.
Hi, everybody. It's Christina Daves with PR for Anyone. Super excited, super honored to have David Meerman Scott with us today. I have followed him for years. He doesn't even know this, but when I first started this about 7 years ago, I sped through your books and just learned so much. And for people who are just watching this for the first time, I'm a do-it-yourself PR strategist. So I teach people how to get in the media. And right now, with everything going on, the term newsjacking is what we use, and you actually coined that phrase. So welcome, and
thank you.
Let's talk some newsjacking.
It's awesome to be here. I do need to clarify that the word newsjacking was actually used in the 1970s in the UK to reference essentially hooligans that stole newspapers from in front of newsstands and then sold them. So the word existed. I just started using it for what it means now, which is understanding the news cycle. Every news story breaks in a typical bell-shaped curve. And when you understand that news cycle and you have a particular expertise and reporters and editors are looking for your expertise, that's your moment to jump in there.
Right. So knowing what's going on, and obviously right now, COVID-19 that's
huge.
Really 95% of the news.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, you and I have been doing public relations. I mean, I've been doing it for 30 years in one way or another. I've never seen anything like this where you go on, like I was just on, and I can't keep away. I don't know about you. I just can't keep away. I was on the New York Times site about an hour ago. I was on the Washington Post site about 45 minutes ago. I go to Google News a couple times a day, and the top 20 stories are COVID-19. Everything else is off the page.
Yeah. But the good news is most of us have an expertise that we can provide value to. You know,
Absolutely.
everybody's scared, everybody, and I think it's more fear of the unknown than anything. We just don't know what's around the corner. But if you have an expertise that you can share, now is the time to jump on this. And I mentioned to you, I'm getting emails constantly from my clients who are, you know, HR people, real estate people, because the real estate market's really not being impacted. Health and wellness, like there's such an opportunity. And again, not to sell right now, not to gouge anybody, but
no, not at all.
Provide value, give people relief and knowledge and things that can help them.
What's interesting about this is, and this is sort of the reason why this is such a big opportunity, is that normally when mere mortals like us are trying to get attention in the news, we have to convince a reporter or an editor that we have something interesting to say to work into their story. What's happening now that's so different, and it doesn't happen very often, is that the reporters and editors need us. They absolutely need us in their stories, and they are they're searching frantically for people to quote in their stories. They're looking for alternative angles on the story. A friend of mine, I don't know if you know who Vern Harnish is, but he just got a whole bunch of press because he writes and speaks about how companies scale up. And he just got a bunch of press because he talks about how companies are trying to keep the employees that they have on the payroll, even though it's difficult. And in some cases turn them from full-time employees to part-time freelancers, but to keep them on the payroll. And that's an important story. And there's so
Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. I guess it could be my internet. Okay. Sorry about this. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but I think I may have a workaround. We'll see. Sorry, hang on just one second. Frustrating. Let's see here.
I think the problem is your wind power is sitting still right now and not moving.
You know, that I hate when that happens. It could be. Okay. Hopefully this one will work.
Knowledge and things that can help them.
What's interesting about this is, and this is sort
okay, so hang on here. I will explain what's going on later. Let's let's go back to sharing, and hopefully this will work.
Sort of the reason why this is such a big opportunity is that normally when mere mortals like us are trying to get attention, and he just got a bunch of press because he talks about how companies are trying to keep the employees that they have on the payroll, even though it's difficult, and in some cases turn them from full-time employees to part-time freelancers, but to keep them on the payroll. And that's an important story. And there's so many stories like that. As you said, there's real estate and wellness and all of the different things that you said. And there's always a reporter looking for somebody to quote. So instead of us trying to pitch reporters on our time, which is normally what happens, what's happening now is we are getting in front of them on their time. It's a really big difference.
It is, and that's why I think what's really important too is content right now.
Yeah.
Get your content out there, because the journalists are going to find you. They're, like you said, they're looking for experts in certain fields. They're coming up with their ideas of, you know, and we learn new things every day. Yes. About what's going on. So they need to write stories about that or do interviews about that. And knowing what that is and pushing content out. I think I told you when we spoke yesterday, I've been just doing nonstop videos, like where it's just constant. Yes. Because there's such a need for it.
Yes, I have too. I've also participated in a number of virtual events. I do about 30 or 40 paid speeches a year all over the world. And of course, they're all canceled for a 3-month period. And who knows, maybe longer. And a bunch of events have now gone to virtual. But you're right. There's multiple ways that we can get our ideas out there into the marketplace. The first thing to recognize, however, is that reporters are searching for us. Reporters are searching for experts. So it's a good idea for us to be in front of them in the way that they're searching. So I'm a big fan of writing blog posts that have something to do with your area of expertise around a particular news story, in this case, COVID-19. I did a blog post a couple of days ago talking about what business people can do to improve their marketing while they're sidelined with this crisis and they have time on their hands. Here are a few things that people can do to improve their marketing, you know, when they're sitting at home twiddling their thumbs, as an example. And then if a reporter or editor out there is, oh my gosh, what can people do during COVID-19 to improve their marketing? They do a search, perhaps they'll find me. The other thing which I know that you do and that you talk about is using Twitter, because every reporter is on Twitter. Every reporter uses Twitter as a tool to find sources. And so if you use Twitter yourself to do a couple of things that come to mind, the first thing, and I know that you teach these ideas, so I'm not telling you anything, but the first thing is that you create a piece of content somewhere else, a video, a blog post, a piece of content on your website, share it on Twitter, but use the appropriate hashtags. So in this case, COVID-19 is a hashtag that's trending. And then you could do several different hashtags that the reporter can triangulate. So hashtag COVID-19, hashtag wellness, or hashtag COVID-19, hashtag real estate. And then if a reporter is searching on those two hashtags because they're doing a story and you happen to use those two hashtags, bingo, your tweet pops up. And then if you're pointing to something in that tweet, a video or a blog post or a piece of content on your website, and the reporter finds it, sometimes they'll even quote you without contacting you, which is incredible, right?
That's where those Google alerts come in. I always tell people, make sure you Google yourself and see. So what would be your number one tip for people right now? You're sitting at home, you can help people, you have this expertise. Do you recommend Twitter, maybe even tagging a journalist on something?
Well, that's another way that you can use the Twitter. So the first way is create a piece of content, and it has to be value added. It has to be valuable. I always tell people the best way: create the content to reach your audience, but then have in the back of your mind that it might be found by a journalist. So in other words, always add that, always be valuable. And if anyone wants to check me out on Twitter, I am DM Scott, that's DMSCOTT. And so that's one way, but always be adding value. Don't just constantly tweet willy-nilly trying to get press, but rather be valuable to the people who already follow you. The second thing you can do, which you just mentioned, is if you know that particular reporters are right in your wheelhouse, right? They're writing about the thing that you are an expert in. Yes, you can tag that reporter on Twitter. I always recommend doing it in such a way that you're clearly following their work. So maybe they're a newspaper reporter in the city or the town you live in, and they just wrote a story about COVID-19, and they talked about the effect on the local economy. And if you're in the real estate business, perhaps they forgot about real estate. You could tweet them and say, hey, use their Twitter ID. Hey, John Smith, loved your story about the effect of COVID-19, hashtag COVID-19 on the hashtag Boston, I live in Boston economy, use the Boston Globe Twitter ID. But you might be interested to know that we've done some studies on what the effect on the real estate market is. You might want to check them out and then point to a blog post. So you're basically helping them to do a follow-on story to the one that they just wrote, which you're clearly saying that you just read.
Exactly, showing them the love. So I always say, make
Yes.
sure they know that you're, and I wanted to share, just as we're talking about this, Kate Rogers from MSNBC tweeted this when you talk about Twitter, but she said, finding the amount of PR pitches coming in that are not related to the stock market, economy, COVID-19, et cetera, really shocking, ... Still surprised every day. I mean this with as much kindness as possible. Please read the room.
Yes.
And that's so important. See what that media outlet is talking about. What have they
Right.
already covered? I had a great idea for one of the shows, and then I Googled it, and they had already done it. So
Right.
don't waste their time
No.
pitching your idea if they've done it. You've got to do that extra little bit of homework.
The other thing that's really interesting is that some outlets are actually putting out calls for experts. Way more so than they normally do. I saw one this morning from CNBC, and they specifically called out and said, looking for business people who have been affected by COVID-19 who are willing to talk. And that's rare that,
Right.
that a news outlet will put out, typically through Twitter, but sometimes through other means, put out a call for people to help them. And so being aware of what's happening is important. And, sometimes the old-fashioned way of doing a letter to the editor, or in some cases, some of the news outlets have ways that you can contribute video, like CNN, I think it's called the iReport. Is that right?
I believe so.
I think so. There's ways that certain media outlets encourage members of the public to submit video and submit text-based stories in the form of editorials. And many times in a crisis like this, there aren't as many well-crafted videos or articles that, bylined articles that people write, because people don't naturally have that ability to think, oh, how can I write something that's interesting on this breaking news story? You know, I've noticed that a lot of the letters to the editor in I live in Boston, the local paper, are about COVID-19, but I can't imagine the average person in the city of Boston waking up and say, "Ooh, I'm going to write an editorial today about, you know, a byline about the COVID-19 situation." So even the good old fashioned way that we used to do it 30 or 50 or 100 years ago might even work today.
Right. And as you mentioned, you know, this is all that we see right now in the media. And you know, if you Google newsjacking and David Meerman Scott, you'll see his diagram. And, you know, it's been breaking news, but it's still going to be hot news, but they've got to come up with other stories.
Yes.
They can't just keep saying the same
Yes.
thing over and over again.
Yes.
That's probably why CNN or CNBC, whoever you mentioned, is looking for real world stories, because they've got to fill 24/7.
Right. And what's happening now, what's typical of a news story like this, is initially it's just the facts. And this story is such an enormous story that it still is just the facts in a lot of the stories. So how many people have COVID-19? How many deaths have there been? What's happening in Italy? What's happening in China? What's happening in different American cities? You know, San Francisco just did a lockdown. New York is I think either doing a lockdown or talking about did a lockdown. Those are the facts. But as soon as the facts are reported, then the news reporters shift to what does this mean and how can I add color to it? So in the Boston area, a couple of days ago, they closed all the restaurants and bars. Those are the facts. That's what comes out day 1 or day 2. In day 3 and day 4, it's what does this mean for restaurant workers? What does this mean for food supply companies? What does this mean for the shopping malls that have tenants who are restaurants? Are they going to be able to afford their rent next month? So we've just talked just in 3 seconds there. That's a food story, a worker's story, and a real estate story. And so any one of those things are stories that the reporters are working on. And I bet they're working on hundreds of other angles on the fact that was reported just a couple of days ago.
Right. So this is a huge opportunity, like I said, to share your message with such a big audience.
Yeah.
So, and the people who are jumping on this are seeing success.
Yes.
And to have that and to get your name out there, you know, in the media, and you know this, it just gives you so much authority and credibility, and will do so much, because we are all going to bounce back from this.
Oh, yeah.
This is, you know, our businesses are going to continue. We've got a big blip ahead of us, but we will be back. So take advantage of this. Learn newsjacking and listen. That's really important. Listen to what those media outlets are saying or writing, and how can you provide value.
And you know what's interesting, Christina, is your whole business is PR for anyone, and this is the moment in history for PR for anyone. This is our moment. You know, yes, you can do it anytime, but it's never been, I don't want to say easier because I don't want to trivialize it, but this is the moment that any one of us can have enormous media hits. We can transform our business in this time of crisis. You know, I love the fact that you talk about PR for anyone, because that's the situation we're in right now, don't you think?
I do. And on that note, you know, please try this. You know, provide your value, share it with journalists. Like David said, this is the opportunity. Please check him out. He is amazing. Like I said, I have followed him for years. I have read his books. Look up Newsjacking. You can Google it. And he's got some videos out there, and you'll see the curve, and you can learn so much from that. I learned so much from that early on. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful to have you here with us.
Oh, and thank you.
Okay. I just want to unpack a couple things there that may not be really evident, and then I want to give an example, and I have one other thing I want to show you today. So the first thing is to think about what I found very interesting in what this guy was saying. He was talking about not necessarily finding the audience for your business. He was talking about finding the media. He was talking about finding where are the people, whether it's reporters, whoever, TV people, et cetera, et cetera. And I believe this to be true also, they are on Twitter. And the reason they're on Twitter is because Twitter, if you spend any time on it, and particularly if you go into specialized Twitter, you'll find that there is an immediacy to what's going on there. It's different than Facebook. It's different than Instagram. It's a place, there's a lot of political people. There's a lot of business leaders. There's a lot of media. It's just kind of a different animal. I don't even know how to best describe it. But the point is, he's saying figure out where those people are because they can be the megaphone for your business. And just to kind of highlight that, and this may not be fully thought through, I apologize. But yesterday at the end of the show, we were talking about campfires, beach campfires, right? And we talked about how that's turning into be a very large business in some parts of the country, coming out of nowhere. Never heard of it. Not something I had any awareness of at all. And Ruth spoke up and said, if you have land or you're a farmer, you might be able to actually, in effect, do the same thing, have campfires or whatever you want to call it on your farm, and have people come and roast marshmallows and tell stories. So, as a part of an agritourism feature, if you will, or benefit that you might offer. So if Ruth were to write an article about that, write a story or record a video about it, I'm just using this as an example, and put that in a place where there is a chance that someone will pick it up, whether it's Twitter or one of these other social media or even your email list. There are lots of these. Almost every media company has an email contact list if you take the time to kind of dig through. That may well be picked up because it's something that's kind of cool. It's summertime. It's a neat thing to do. I've never read an article about a campfire on a farm or at a beach for that matter. But that's an example of newsjacking and getting ahead of something or using something to bring attention to what you're doing and in your expertise. I think one other point that this guy made that I thought was pretty interesting, he was talking about a particular individual, I can't remember the name, and he said, I don't know if you know so-and-so, but that person specializes in, and now I can't remember, I think he specializes in I don't know, businesses hiring, let's say, I can't remember. It was some specific example of a guy who writes on a particular subject. That particular subject just generally became hot for whatever reason. And now he is being sought after by all different kinds of media outlets because that particular thing that he specializes in is hot. So he's the guy, he's the go-to source for whatever that subject is. And so I would argue for you all, one of the things that I find in this group that's very interesting to me is the number of you that have come from big corporations and you're pursuing your dream of developing your own business. I would argue that many of you are experts on this because you have done it. You've got the black eyes to prove it and the stress and all that kind of stuff. But why not be a source for that whole subject or to develop media contacts that really know that's who you are and where you come from and your experience. And, you ran a big corporate team and now you're selling something else for yourself. I'm just making an observation about that. I have no proof that is of any interest to anybody, but to me it is. And I bet you there are millions of people who would love to do what you're doing, want to copy in some form what you're doing, and so you're potentially a subject matter expert in, it could be get right down into the vertical that you worked in your corporation, whether it's technology or manufacturing or something else. You could further define. I'm a dropout from the corporate technology world, or however you want to put it. And you can talk about the pros and cons of that, or things you've learned, or funny little stories that happened to you. I had this story, I may have told this before, I apologize, and so it's kind of an example, but when I was in high school, I was relatively high profile individual, and did some things that certain people didn't like too much. Like I had really long hair when I played basketball, and everyone else had short hair, stuff like that. So this one woman took it upon herself to really she was the mother of one of the kids, and she just came after me every chance she got, just would yell at me. And one time she had her husband buy a comb at a basketball game and hand me the comb to make me comb my hair and all this kind of stuff. So she was really, really something else, and was just after me almost my whole high school. And I used to laugh and give her a hard time. Well, while I was in college, I was home at Christmas time, and I got a job. Yes, I got a job engraving British sterling bottles at a department store. That was my Christmas job. So I'm sitting at a table. People are handing me bottles of British sterling, and I've got this little machine that puts their initials on it. And sure enough, here she comes. She comes walking up to the table, puts her hands on her hips, and goes, "Trotz, I've seen you finally made it. Way to go." So she just loved it, and I had to laugh, because she got me good. So I'm glad to see you reach your potential. So anyway, I just tell that story because that would be a funny story to tell, perhaps for some segment of the population. I don't know. So anybody want to comment on this? I don't mean to bore you with boring stories, but just trying to make a point. Anybody? Sana? Oh.
I mean, people love stories, right? They want to relate, and that's something I actually picked up on when we were working together. When I first joined you guys, right? I don't know if you remember, I put out this reel, this little video on social media talking about, hey, this is what I used to do, and here I am now. Look what I've done, right? It was cheesy. Now, I mean, looking back, I'm like, I did that. But people like that kind of stuff. It's not about, I mean, when I do that, I personally feel like I'm showing off, but people want to relate. They don't want to, they don't want to buy products from businesses. They just want to see the faces behind the businesses and look at this, hear the stories. So yeah, I agree with that. I'm still kind of working on finding better approaches of doing that. I mean, I'm still learning. I don't know.
Yeah.
Without feeling guilty about showing off, I guess.
Well, first of all, this you all may disagree with me, but I find in general, women are much more reluctant to promote themselves than the typical guy. And I don't know if that's societal or what that is. So I don't think it's showing off or bragging. I think it's providing information. And people need it, particularly those that might be where you were 2 or 3 years ago on the cusp of, should I do this? Should I step off? And, for example, for you, I think if you were to write or produce a short video with the top 3 reasons you left your corporate job, right? That's an example of a framing and a way. It's not real long. It gets to the point. That could be on Instagram. It could be on Twitter, et cetera. So it's think about some of the stuff you see. How could you use some of those formats that seem to gain traction, right? They seem like, it seems stupid to me, but it's designed for the attention economy, and that you've got 6 to 10 seconds to make somebody stop and watch or read. So that's my recommendation is think about making it consumable, making your story consumable, little points. What are some of the things that were really critical in your journey that probably many are looking at that same thing, right? Like, how do I leave my 401k and my security and blah, blah, blah. all of the different things. I'm not trying to minimize. I just want to make that point.
So this is actually really good, Dennis. I mean, I'm just thinking about it as we're talking about it. When I started, when I quit my job, I mean, I was in that, I had a career of like what 14 years or so. It was the hardest decision I ever had to make. It was like, oh my God, what do I do? My life's gonna end. What's
Yeah.
out there? I don't know what's like, you know. But I remember for months reading and digging up articles, blogs, and looking for people on like Reddit or I don't know, Quora, just randomly looking for stories about people who might have done that. And there were so many. And it was kind of reassuring, okay, people have done it. I can do it too. So yeah, that's actually a really, really good point. I'm gonna have to think about that a little bit.
Well, I just heard the headline for your story. Will I die if I quit my job?
I love that.
Right? I mean, that's the way it is.
I felt
you
like
gotta
it.
grab it. Yeah.
The day I
will
made
I
the
die?
call,
Or
I felt like I was gonna die.
Or I didn't die when I quit my job. It would be your next story, right?
I love
So
that.
anyway, so I do, so this is a lot to think about, but I have to tell you a story about something I found just to, and this will be short. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I think that you all enjoy it. So one of the things about, about business that we're talking about is how do you get attention? How do you get people to find you? And I ran across something that is really, really cool. I've not seen anybody really put this together. So this is a company in rural Maine that makes wooden surfboards. Okay, so think about that. Think of they're making surfboards out of wood. Well, let me just share my screen so you can see this, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. Okay, so this is the company. It's called Grain Surfboards, and it turns out that they created a surfboard made out of wood that I believe is lighter than existing surfboards, and it's got a lot of unique technology to it that is why it's lighter and why it works so well. I'm not going to get into all that detail, but I want to show you one thing that I think is just amazing. So they actually provide the plans of how you can make it yourself. And then all the things related to that, including kits, precision cut sets, plans, digital plans, all kinds of stuff. And so they don't hide their technology, which as I understand is really good. They actually provide these things to people. And so what has happened with them, let's see here. Let's just pick one of these here real quick. So they're selling a kit and everything you need to build your surfboard for those who might be inclined. So the point there is they have a $0 marketing and advertising budget. They're fully disclose everything that they do, including the sourcing of the wood and all that kind of stuff. And they provide you with the way to make their product yourself. And they also will just either give away or sell the plans. This kit that we just looked at includes the materials to actually build it, but they also just give the plan. So if you want to do it yourself, literally, you can get the plan on how to build this surfboard. And basically it's hollow. The surfboard is hollow and has these ridges in it. And they use Gore-Tex in a way that allows air to get into it, but not water, so that it stays very, very light and easy to deal with on a wave. And I'm not a surfer, but the point is they're using a really open, non-proprietary, non-protective way of sharing what they've learned. And I just think it's amazing. And they're a very, very successful company in a rural area making what would seem to sound like a crazy product, right? A surfboard made out of wood. I mean, I personally don't think of a surfboard made out of wood, although I know back in the 20s and 30s, that's in fact what surfboards were made out of. They were made out of wood. They were also about 30 feet long, if I remember right. They were really, really long. So it was hard to catch a wave in those days. And so anyway, I did want to point out these guys as somebody who really is doing a neat way of building their market. So I don't know if there's anything in there for any of you all, whether it's how to make Opal's Candies peanut brittle, and with a recipe for those who want to do it themselves. I don't know. It caught my eye and I thought it was pretty good. So, all right. Well, that is what I have for today. Hopefully it's thought provoking, and there's different ways as far as assembling a media list using Twitter or other tools. Lots of different ways to do that. Google's probably your friend. Twitter may have ways to find out. Just a good suggestion from Jack on the chat. Newsjack on how you might deal with supply chain issues. That might be something that people will figure out. So I think you can go on to Twitter, for example, and put on supply chain problems as the search, and you may find people who are talking about it, people who write about it, all that kind of stuff. I personally am not an expert on Twitter. I use it very limited, not something I'm really aware of in terms of the ins and outs. Maybe some of you are, and please don't hesitate to share if you do know that. But let's see, we have a couple other points here. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anything here. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, it's not bragging if it's true. That's perfect. So, okay, well, great seeing everybody, and I hope you have a nice weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. Take care.